Tim Drake is Brother-Shaped by Graphic Nobody. Chapter 8. Tim entered his apartment after Dick dropped him off, feeling annoyed with everyone. He never should have mentioned the phone thing in front of Jason. At the time, he thought the guy was only one step away from hating him. He hadn't imagined he would go and tell Dick. And to think, he was excited about them getting along. "Hello, Tim!" Donna smiled warmly from her place on the couch with Jack. "Was that Dick Grayson I saw dropping you off?" "So much for Dad not knowing." Jack's head snapped up, a frown clear on his face. Tim held in a sigh, noting that Jack was holding a drink again. "Hey, Donna, yeah, he saw me walking and offered a ride. Nice, huh?" "Oh, that's lovely." His father's girlfriend smiled. "You must miss seeing the Waynes. It was so kind of Mr. Wayne to take you in." "Enough about the Waynes." Jack stood, heading towards the dining room. "I'm hungry. We've been waiting for almost an hour." Dinner was a tense affair. Tim wasn't very hungry, the pancakes from earlier sitting heavy in his stomach, as he was crushed by the strained atmosphere. Donna attempted to start conversation several times, but even her natural cheer was strained by Jack's glower. Tim did his best to meet her halfway, ignoring his dad's bad attitude. "So, Tim, your dad was telling me he wants to take you to a Knights game. Wouldn't that be fun?" Donna smiled at Jack, placing a hand on his arm. "Yeah." Tim looked at Jack, forcing a smile. "Sounds really nice, Dad. When were you thinking?" Jack just grunted in response. Tim's smile dropped. Donna glanced between the two before sitting back, placing her napkin on the table. "Well, I don't know about you two, but I am absolutely wiped." Her cheery tone had taken on a slightly forced quality. "I should probably head home. I have an early shift at the hospital tomorrow." Donna leaned over, kissing Jack on the cheek. "I'll see you tomorrow, dear." Tim called a farewell to Donna as she gathered her things and left, wishing he could flee with her. He and Jack continued their meal in silence. Whenever Tim glanced up at his father, Jack was staring sullenly down at his plate, pushing the food around. Tim searched for a way to break the tense silence. "Well, here goes nothing. So, I've been trying to learn how to cook. I was thinking I could make us pancakes in the morning," Tim offered, chewing his lip nervously. "Why were you in Dick Grayson's car?" Jack ignored his comment completely. Tim frowned. "I told you. He saw me walking and offered a ride. It would have been rude to say no." Jack scoffed. "Ah, sure. You were just being polite. Not like you've ever had a problem being rude at home. It has nothing to do with you preferring the Waynes over your own father." Tim sighed, feeling a wave of exhaustion hit him. This had been a frequent argument when he first moved home, and was still honest with his dad about spending time at Wayne Manor. He didn't want to fight again. He didn't have the energy. Tim stood and gathered his plate, circling around the table to collect Donna's. "I'm not doing this tonight, Dad. I'll see you in the morning." He turned towards the kitchen. "Don't walk away when I'm speaking to you." What happened next was an accident. Tim was sure of it. Jack grabbed Tim's upper arm harshly, right as Tim went to take a step. The grip on his upper body threw off Tim's balance, causing him to overcorrect and trip over his own feet. As Tim fell towards the ground, Jack maintained his hold on Tim's arm. A loud pop filled Tim's ears, followed by the crash of ceramic shattering against the hardwood floor. Jack finally released Tim, and he landed in a pile of broken plates. Tim let out a cry of surprise, as sharp shards dug into his skin. A blinding pain shot through his arm as he rolled over onto his back, cradling it to his chest with a grimace. "Oh my God, Tim!" Jack knelt down, eyes wide as his hands hovered over Tim. I'm sorry, I tried to catch you. You tripped." Tim tried to breathe through the pain as Jack helped him into a sitting position. "Stay here. I'll grab the broom and first aid kit." Jack ran into the kitchen. When his father ran back, Tim was already making his way to his feet. Jack continued with his string of apologies. Tim clenched his teeth. "It's fine, Dad." He ground out, just wanting the night to be done. "I'm okay. Your cheek is bleeding." Jack looked panicked as he continued to hover uselessly. Tim tried to rein in his anger, which was worsened by the pain. I said I'm fine. I'll put a Band-Aid on it or something. Can you just clean this up? I want to go to bed. Tim's tone was harsher than he would usually get away with, but Jack didn't seem to notice. Right, of course. You should get some rest. We can talk about it in the morning. Jack started pushing at the mess on the floor with a broom, clearly not knowing what he was doing. Tim held back tears as he made his way upstairs, breathing deeply. He had tripped. It was an accident. Jack hadn't meant to hurt him. Tim was clumsy. Tim elected to ignore the blood on his cheek, as he sat down on his bed, wincing in pain as his shoulder was jostled. Now that his head was clearing, it was obvious his shoulder was dislocated. He had dislocated it last year in a fight with Killer Croc, and Dr. Leslie warned him that he would be more prone to dislocation in the future. It made sense that his dad trying to catch him would be all it took. The dislocation would need to be reduced. Tim pulled out his phone to call Dick. When he opened his contacts, his thumb hovered over the call button for a long moment before he sighed, setting it back down. After the conversation in the car, Dick would blow this way out of proportion. And Tim didn't have the energy to try to explain everything. Just the thought of it brought a fresh wave of tears to his eyes. Jason was off limits for the same reason. Bruce or Alfred weren't even an option. This wasn't a patrol-related injury, after all. That only left... Hey, bestie! Steph answered her phone cheerfully. What's up? Tim waited in his room for 2 hours, listening carefully to his dad going to bed. He did not want to be caught sneaking out on a night like this. His usual plan of going out his bedroom window was out, with his arm the way it was, so he would have to use the front door. Tim pulled a dark hoodie over his clothes once he heard his father's door close. His Robin uniform was back in the cave, and he wouldn't have been able to get it on without assistance anyway. An hour later, Tim was making his way to a rooftop along Spoiler's patrol route. Climbing the fire escape was sending white-hot pain through his body with every step, forcing him to stop to breathe on each landing. His arm was killing him at this point, and climbing felt almost impossible. But there was no way he could use a grapple gun, even if he had one. He hadn't mentioned why he needed to meet Steph, just asked for her patrol route for the night and said he might swing by. After what felt like way too long, Tim reached the edge of the roof. He awkwardly hoisted himself up with his good arm, rolling over the ledge and landing with a cut-off yelp. Tim lay there for several moments with his eyes squeezed shut, waiting for the pain to reduce from excruciating to bearable. After what felt like several minutes, Tim pried his eyes open to see the familiar silhouette of Spoiler's costume crouch over him. Stephanie's brows draw together as she poked him in the chest repeatedly. Tim? What's wrong? Her voice came into focus. Do you know how to pop an arm back into place? Tim asked, sitting up slowly. Do I know what? What the hell happened to you? Is that blood? She wiped at the cut on his cheek, causing him to flinch back. I dislocated my shoulder, and I don't want to deal with Alfred or Dr. Leslie right now. Can you help me fix it? Tim, what the fuck? Stephanie looked deeply concerned. Tim tried not to show his frustration. This is what he was trying to avoid. No, I've never done it before. Tim let out a huff. Come on, I know it's part of B's first aid training. I can be your first test subject. I don't know, Tim. Maybe we should call Nightwing? He's on patrol tonight, right? And anyway, how did this happen? Weren't you supposed to stay in with your dad? Don't call in. Tim responded quickly. I snuck out. Ran into some trouble. I didn't want him to know. All technically true things. Tim, my dude, I know we have no boundaries or whatever, but I draw the line at knowing what your dislocated shoulder feels like. Tim gritted his teeth. The pain was already getting to him, and he didn't feel like arguing anymore. Time to pull out the big guns. Hey, remember that time I snuck into Gotham during a gang war to help you deliver your baby? Steph let out a groan. No way, Tim. You're not using that against me. That was a mutual trauma. Steph, my wonderful, amazing friend. My favorite ex. My arm is killing me. I want painkillers, a nap, and to have the night be over with. Just fix my damn shoulder. Tim looked at her pleadingly. 5 minutes later, Steph had finished watching a YouTube tutorial on reducing dislocation and was helping Tim get his arm properly positioned, while Tim stuffed the sleeve of his hoodie in his mouth. Fuck. Okay, are you ready? She asked nervously. Tim gave her a harsh glare that translated roughly to, hurry the fuck up. Okay. Steph took a deep breath. 1, 2... Before she got to 3, a loud thump sounded from the edge of the roof. What are you two idiots doing? 3, Steph said, at the same time, shoving Tim's arm back into socket. Tim screamed into his hoodie sleeve, falling to his knees. Red Hood ran over, dropping a bag of waffles. What the fuck was that? Spoiler hovered nervously. Oh god, Tim, if I broke your arm, it's totally your fault. Tim groaned in response, taking a deep breath, as he blinked dark spots out of his vision. No, not broken. Just need a minute. Hood was still standing over the two of them, hands on his hip like an angry housewife. Seriously, one of you brats better tell me what the hell's going on right now. Tim dislocated his shoulder and made me fix it. Steph told Hood, unrepentant, about selling Tim out. Tim turned to glare at Steph. The betrayals today just kept piling up. The pain from his arm had decreased significantly, but he knew it would be a bitch tomorrow. Oh my god, what the fuck? Red Hood started looking Tim over, checking his shoulder. Why didn't you call Alfred? Or go to Leslie's clinic? You could have broken something. Tim glared at the ground, not responding. His adrenaline was fading rapidly, now that the pain was manageable, leaving him exhausted. Red Hood pulled some bandages out, securing Tim's arm to his chest to keep it in place. Stand up. I'm taking you home. Panic shot through Tim, not wanting to go home yet. No! Red Hood stopped. Why not? I just don't want to go home right now. Tim winced at the poor excuse. Hood's stance softened slightly. I'm at my place, replacement. I wouldn't make you go home. S. You good if we postpone our waffle date? Spoiler nodded, still looking guilty as she hovered over Tim. Yeah, just remember you're paying this week. Hood laughed. Sure thing, kid. You ready to go? Tim nodded. He knew he should go home before his dad noticed he was missing, but the warm, welcoming atmosphere of Jason's place sounded too hard to resist right now. He just wanted to sleep. Okay, I'm gonna take you on my grapple. I'll hold on to you, but try not to squirm too much. Okay? Okay. Tim tugged his hoodie up and wrapped his good arm around Hood's neck, while Hood wrapped his arm around his waist. Soon, they were flying through the air of Gotham. Jason took his time getting the replacement back to his apartment. Calling it a safe house wasn't very accurate at this point, considering he regularly had guests, had actually bought furniture, and stayed there more days than not. Tim was uncharacteristically quiet when they arrived. Jason deposited the kid on his couch and went to retrieve some painkillers and water. Tim accepted them gratefully. Jason removed his helmet and gear, sitting down next to Tim, worry still churning in his gut as he tried to figure out how to begin. So, you want to tell me what happened? Okay, the blunt approach. Tim stared down at his hands, picking at his cuticles. Nothing. Jason took the kid's hands, inspecting them. You have glass in your hands, baby bird. A snack glass. He mumbled, trying to pull them away. Jason tutted and went to get his first aid kit. Tim sat still, as Jason took his hands and carefully began picking out the shards with tweezers. He inspected one closely, realizing Tim was right. It wasn't glass. It was some type of ceramic. Jason watched the kid carefully. He looked like shit. His eyes were glassy and red, and he had a cut slicing across his cheek. Jason made a note to clean that as well. Tim hardly flinched as Jason started cleaning and bandaging his hands, even though the rubbing alcohol had to sting. Tim? Jason asked as he replaced the bandages, stabilizing Tim's arm with a sling. The younger boy didn't look up. You gotta give me something to work with here, kid. I saw you 6 hours ago and you were fine. What happened? Jason's concern grew as Tim continued to stare at his feet, not blinking. Tim didn't respond to the question, just sinking further into himself. Jason shook his good shoulder gently, watching as Tim swayed with the movement. You feeling okay, Timbo? Tim gave a small nod, but otherwise didn't respond or move from his position. Jason took his free hand, now wrapped in bandages. He winced at the icy feeling of Tim's fingers, giving them a squeeze. Jason sighed and fished out his phone with the other hand. Alright, I'm gonna get some backup, okay? You wait here. Jason tucked a blanket around the unresponsive Robin. Walking into the kitchen, Jason dialed one of the only numbers on his phone. He let out a sigh of relief when the line connected. Hey, Wing, you there? Yeah? He heard a couple of grunts and thuds. Kinda in the middle of something. A gunshot followed by the familiar crackle of an eskrima stick. You need something? Have you ever seen Tim disassociate before? Jason glanced into his living room, confirming that Tim hadn't moved. Uh-huh? Give me a minute, okay? Jason listened as the fight went on for another minute or two, before Dick reconnected, sounding slightly breathless. Okay, what's wrong with Tim? He's currently on my couch. Seems pretty checked out. I found him on a rooftop getting first aid from Spoiler. Shit! He didn't say he was patrolling today. Okay, I'm coming over. Is he responding at all? Stopped talking a couple of minutes ago. Jason glanced over to see Tim had laid down and curled up into a ball. He wasn't on patrol. He's still wearing his clothes from earlier. He's really out of it, Wing. Just keep him comfortable. Keep talking to him. I should be there in about... Jason heard a rustling sound. 9 minutes. Okay, I'll see you soon. Jason hung up, heading back into the living room. He sat down on the floor by the couch, hesitating before taking Tim's hand again. He really wasn't cut out for this. Dick face is on his way, baby bird. Think you can squeeze my hand? Tim's icy fingers gave a slight squeeze, but he otherwise didn't respond. Jason was out of his element. He was no stranger to panic attacks, but disassociation was a different territory, and he wasn't exactly a warm, comforting presence. So, Dick told me to keep talking to you. Remember that case you helped me with the other day? The missing sex workers. Well, I caught the guy, thanks to you. Jason squeezed his hand again. He won't hurt anyone again. Jason started explaining some of his other cases, asking for Tim's opinions on certain details. Tim seemed to slowly gain awareness of Jason's talking, blinking more regularly, and squeezing Jason's hand whenever he was prompted. It only took Nightwing 7 minutes to arrive, rather than 9. Nightwing slid open his window and squeezed through the small gap, using his freaky acrobat skills. Show off? He latched the window behind him and pulled his domino mask off, making his way over to the couch. Hey, Timmy! Sounds like you had a rough night. Tim peeled his eyes away from his hand, glancing at Dick, who crouched next to Jason, before his gaze drifted down again. Dick pulled out a brightly colored piece of candy from his utility belt, unwrapping it. You think you can eat this, buddy? Tim nodded, but made no move to take the candy. Dick gave him a small, sad smile, and reached up, placing the candy in Tim's mouth. After a minute, Tim made a harsh face, blinking rapidly and coughing while his eyes watered. That's awful. Jason let out a sigh of relief when the kid spoke for the first time in nearly 15 minutes. Citric acid works every time. Dick smiled apologetically, rubbing circles into Tim's back. You were pretty out of it this time. Tim sighed, rubbing his eyes. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, Timbit. Jason finally rose from his crouched position, wincing as his knees popped. That happen often? Tim shrugged. It's not usually this bad. Dick took a seat next to Tim on the couch, guiding Tim to lean into his side. Do you know what triggered it? It's just been a long day. Tim yawned, eyelids drooping. Jason glanced at his clock, wincing when he saw it was nearly 1 a.m. Why don't you get some sleep? Okay, kiddo? We'll talk more tomorrow. Dick ran his fingers through Tim's hair as the kid nodded drowsily, eyes finally sliding shut. Dick and Jason sat in silence, waiting for Tim's breathing to even out. You want me to move him to the bed? Jason offered a few minutes later. They needed to talk. Dick nodded, helping Jason as he untangled from the kid. Jason scooped Tim up princess style, careful to avoid jostling Tim's bad shoulder. He carried Tim back into the bedroom before laying him down on the mattress, pulling up the covers. Jason grabbed Tim's phone from his hoodie pocket and set it on the nightstand, plugging it into his charger. The screen lit up, bright light harsh in the dark room. Jason glanced down and saw several missed calls from Dad. He double-checked that the phone was on Do Not Disturb before making his way back to the living room. Dick was sitting on the couch, concern clear on his face. So, what happened? I'm not totally sure. Jason plopped down next to his older brother. He had a dislocated shoulder and his hands were all cut up. When I mentioned bringing him home, he panicked pretty bad. Dick sighed, running his hands over his face. You think his dad did something? It came out as a statement rather than a question. Jason felt that familiar rage creep in, building a fire in his chest. Well, it doesn't exactly paint a pretty picture, Dick, he hissed, fighting to keep his voice down. We don't know for sure, Jay. Dick looked exhausted. It wouldn't be the first time Tim snuck out and didn't want to face his dad. That's a red flag too, dumbass. There's something wrong. You may be fine ignoring it and waiting for something worse to happen, but I'm not. Dick was silent for a long moment. Jason was tempted to start shaking the older man. You're right, Jay. This has gone on for long enough. In the morning, we'll sit Tim down and make him tell us what's going on. Jason sighed in relief. Finally. Jesus, you bats tiptoe around everything. Dick huffed out a laugh, but it lacked inflection. I was hoping he would come to me if things got bad. I didn't want to chase him off. Look, Dick, I haven't known the kid as long as you have, but he doesn't seem like the type to ask for help. Dick nodded. You're right. He's been like that since the day he showed up at my apartment. It wasn't until Jack and Janet were bragging to Bruce about their travels at one of those stupid galas that Bruce realized he was getting left alone. Even then, Tim tried to insist he was fine. We had to get Alfred to convince him to stay at the manor, and he would only accept on nights that he had patrol. Sounds like we have our work cut out for us in the morning. Jason sighed. Once they had changed out of their gear and into comfortable clothing, the two brothers stayed up talking for the rest of the night. At first, they were talking about Tim, but the conversation shifted gradually. Dick caught Jason up on what he had been up to for the past few years. Jason returned the favor, sharing some of the less concerning details of his time with the League. If some tears were shed, no they weren't. The two were on the couch in silence, blinking sleepily and watching TV, as the sun started to rise. Jason had put on the BBC's Pride and Prejudice miniseries. Dick, who lacked taste, had bitched and moaned about the choice, but Jason refused to budge. I don't understand the hype around Darcy, Dick complained. Jason smacked him in the chest, eyes glued to the screen. Don't talk shit about my man. Dick's phone started to ring, cutting them off before an argument could begin. He pulled it out and frowned at the screen. It's Jack Drake. Shit. Jason sat up, pausing the TV. Put it on speaker. Fine, but you gotta stay quiet. Got it? Dick commanded. Jason mimed, zipping his lips shut, and Dick accepted the call. Chapter 9. Tim woke up slowly that morning. Several times throughout the night, he was woken by dreams he couldn't remember properly, feeling frightened and upset, but too groggy to wake up fully. In the end, it was the pain in his shoulder that pulled him fully into wakefulness. Once he was sure he was awake, and not stuck in another dream, he climbed out of bed to hunt for more Advil. Judging by the sound coming from the living room, Jason and Dick were up too. Tim didn't particularly want to face them, but he couldn't keep ignoring his arm. Tim wished he was given a few peaceful moments before he remembered the events of the previous night, but he wasn't that lucky. Thoughts and concerns about his dad, his encounter with Steph, and the questions he would face from Dick and Jason plagued his mind all through the night, as he floated between stages of sleep. Now that he was awake, anxiety buzzed through his system, sitting like a heavy stone in his stomach. When he heard his dad's name from the living room, any remaining grogginess disappeared. Jason had left his door cracked open, so it was easy to hover and listen in as Dick answered the phone. Hello? Dick's voice was scratchy, as if he was just waking up.
Mr. Grayson, this is Jack Drake. Have you heard from Timothy?
Tim flinched as his dad's tinny voice filled the living room. Damn, he sounded worried. Tim had been banking on his dad not checking his room before leaving for the day. Tim? No, I haven't. Dick sounded more alert now. Is everything okay?
No, I don't think it is. I'm worried he's run away.
Wait, what? What the hell? What? Why do you say that? Concern filled Dick's tone.
When you dropped him off, he was acting really erratic. He had tried to pick a fight during dinner, so I sent him to his room.
That wasn't what happened. What the hell was his dad saying?
Then, when I went to check on him before bed, he was gone. His backpack is missing, and his phone and wallet are gone, too.
Tim didn't remember grabbing his backpack, but maybe he'd forgotten it on the roof with Steph.
I don't mean to involve you, but I've been worried about Timothy for a while now. He's been sneaking out, keeping secrets. Then, last week...
Jack sighed over the line.
I found drugs in his room.
Tim went cold. He had never done drugs in his life. What was his dad saying? The living room stayed silent for a long moment. You're saying Tim's doing drugs? Dick finally asked. Oh fuck, did Dick believe his dad? Tim felt his breathing starting to pick up.
I don't know what he's doing. I just know he hasn't been acting like himself. Tim's never been a particularly honest or open kid. I'm sure you've noticed. His mother and I had to ground him more than once as a child for telling tales.
Oh, damn. That was true. Tim did lie. He would sneak out, skip school, pretend to be sick. He'd gotten really creative in his attempts to convince his parents to stay home, even though it never worked. His parents had warned his teachers and the house staff to take what he said with a grain of salt. And he'd never stopped. Not really. Once he became Robin, he had kept up with the same lies. His only saving grace was that his parents hadn't cared to discover the truth, satisfied with punishing him when he was caught in a lie and not looking any further. And now Dick and Jason would know that he was a liar. They'd know that Tim was so starved for attention that he would make anything up. His refusal to tell them how he'd gotten hurt last night just made him look more suspicious. Tim noted distantly that his breath was coming in short, harsh pants as he gripped the doorframe with sweaty hands.
It's been worse lately. He's been acting disrespectful, picking fights with me and Donna. I never know who he's with or what he's doing. He refuses to tell me.
Jack sounded defeated and overwhelmed as he painted his picture. Poor, overworked father with a rebellious son. That does sound concerning, Dick agreed. Tim felt tears gather in his eyes. He needed to get out of here. He started looking around the room for his phone and wallet, which he grabbed from the nightstand. You said you checked on him last night? Tim heard Dick ask, as he returned to his post by the door.
That's right.
Jack agreed.
I wanted to give him some time to cool down after he broke some plates at dinner. When I went up to check on him, he was gone.
So you're saying your 15-year-old son has been gone for at least 20 hours? And you're just now searching. Why haven't you called the police? Why would Dick want Jack to call the police? Tim paused again, listening for his father's response. Jack was quiet for a long moment.
I wanted to give him time to return. I don't think the police need to be involved over some silly teenage rebellion. If he isn't with you, he's probably with that Stephanie girl.
I thought you didn't know where he was. Dick's voice had taken on a cold tone.
I don't. I'm just guessing. Look, Mr. Grayson, if Timothy isn't with you, then I'll get back to searching. Just let me know if you hear from him.
The irritation that filled Jack's voice sent a shiver down Tim's spine. I'll be sure to do that, Jack. In fact, I'll pass on your concern to my father as well. I'm sure he'll want to hear what you've got to say about Tim. Oh God, please don't call Bruce. Tim would rather die than have him hear all of that. Thanks for the call. Dick hung up. Panicked, Tim hurried into the living room. Jason was pacing behind the couch, while Dick sat glaring at his phone. Please don't call Bruce! Tim begged. Dick's head shot up, and Jason turned to face him. Ah, Tim, you're awake. Jason started over towards him. Tim pushed past Jason until he was standing in front of Dick. "You don't need to call Bruce," he said in a rush. I'm not on drugs, I swear. I don't even know why I didn't fight with my dad. Well, I did, but it's not like he said." Tim felt his breath come out faster and faster as he tripped over his words. "I lied, but not about that. I don't know why he would—" Tim was gasping at this point, tears finally overflowing onto his burning cheeks. He was overheating, still wearing his thick hoodie from last night. "Hey, Timmy, it's okay." Dick stood, pulling Tim into a hug. Tim stood there stiffly as Dick rubbed circles into his back. "I believe you." The words sent a wave of relief through Tim. "You do?" Tim hiccuped, leaning into Dick slightly. "Of course I do," Dick reassured him. "Jason does too." Tim relaxed into the older man fully, sobs tearing out of his throat, as the events of the last 24 hours crashed into him. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear those words. Dick continued to rub his back, whispering soft reassurances. He heard Jason moving around in the kitchen. After a few moments, Tim felt himself calm down enough to talk. "I don't know why you would say all of that." Tim sniffled. "I swear, I don't have any drugs." "He's trying to make you sound crazy," Jason stated bluntly, returning with a glass of water. "Here, drink this." Tim took the glass in shaking hands, as Dick guided him down to sit on the couch. Tim sipped at the water, mulling over Jason's words. Why would he want to make me sound crazy? "It's a technique for abusers." Jason sat beside Tim. The older boy had his fist clenched tightly, expression hard. Tim almost dropped his water. "My dad isn't an abuser! Why would you even say that?" He felt his body tense up at the accusation. He knew things weren't great with his dad. His early childhood had certainly been marked by neglect, but not that. Dick resumed his circles on Tim's back, sitting down on Tim's other side, so the younger boy was wedged safely between the older two. "Tim, how did you dislocate your shoulder?" "I tripped," Tim responded stiffly. "Did your dad tell you to say that?" Jason asked. "No!" Tim nearly shouted, tears of frustration building up again. "They were getting this all wrong. It wasn't like that." Tim felt like he was suffocating as he fought through the accusations. He yanked at his hoodie, trying to get it off, as sweat trickled down his back. Dick tutted when Tim got caught on the sling, helping him carefully disentangle himself and pull the offending piece of clothing over his head. "Shit." Jason cursed harshly as the hoodie came off. Tim looked at him in alarm, before following his line of sight down to his arm. A dark, reddish-purple bruise circled his upper arm where his father had grabbed him. Tim felt a wave of nausea as he took it in sight. He pulled down the sleeve of his t-shirt, trying to cover the bruise. Jason jumped off the couch and started pacing again, taking slow, controlled breaths that Tim recognized as one of Bruce's breathing techniques. Tim turned to look at Dick, trying to think of how to explain things without making it worse. Dick stared at the bruise with blazing eyes before letting out a sigh. It was a tired sound. Tim felt a wave of guilt wash over him as he realized how early it was. Dick and Jason had both been patrolling last night. They should be sleeping, not worrying over Tim. "It's not what it looks like," Tim whispered, defeated. It was an accident. He knew how it sounded. They were going to come to all the wrong conclusions, and Tim couldn't stop them. "Okay, Tim, I'm gonna ask you some questions, and I need you to be honest with me, okay? You can just shake your head or nod," Dick asked, sounding more serious than Tim had ever heard the man before. Tim just nodded miserably, feeling like he had no other choice. "Did your dad give you that bruise?" Tim nodded, trying to ignore Jason's resumed cursing. "Okay." Dick took a deep breath, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Is that when your shoulder got hurt?" Tim nodded again. Despite his efforts to stay grounded, the numbness was creeping in again, causing his vision to blur at the edges. He clenched the fist on his good arm. "Has your dad ever hurt you before?" Tim hesitated for a long moment, before slowly shaking his head. Disconnected memories from when he was little flashed through his head, a dark figure looming over him as his mom left the room, hiding in his closet as footsteps pounded up the stairs, a set of shelves breaking. He was fairly sure those were his imagination. The memories never made any sense anyways. If Dick noticed his hesitation, he didn't comment. Do you ever feel unsafe when you're with your dad? Now that question stumped Tim. He was Robin, for pity's sake. His dad had been in a wheelchair just a few months ago. There was no good reason why he shouldn't be safe at home. But flashes of the night before, of all the previous nights of yelling and fighting and crying, filled Tim's mind. It was all just so confusing. The numbness pulled back, panic once again flooding his system. It was as if his body couldn't decide how to feel. Tim's breathing started to pick up again. Here, kid. Follow my lead. Jason sat back down next to Tim, exaggerating the breathing pattern he had been following before. Tim did his best to match Jason's pace, around the lump in his throat. He tried to focus on the steady weight of Dick's hand on his back, as he fought to control his breathing. After several long, tense moments, his head started to feel a little clearer. Think you can answer my questions, Timmy, or do you need a break? Tim recognized that Dick was using his victim voice, the type Tim himself used with kids he encountered as Robin. He tried not to feel pathetic at how reassuring it was. I don't know, Tim finally whispered after several more moments of silence. I just get so confused when I'm around him. Confused how? Dick asked, patiently. It's like I can't think straight. One minute everything's fine, and the next we're fighting, and I don't want to fight, but he always makes me feel so off balance and angry. Tim explains, feeling pathetic as he struggled to explain. And then he starts crying or yelling, and I don't know what to do, and everything goes foggy, and I can't remember why we were fighting, or what I'm supposed to be angry about. I don't even know what I've done wrong. I'm just tired. Dick and Jason stay quiet, giving him room to continue. Once he started, it was like he couldn't stop. He calls me names, and he breaks things, and he tells me I'm misremembering or a liar. One minute, I'm sure he hates me, and then he's saying how much he loves me, and how sorry he is, and we're making plans to go to a hockey game. And I just shut down. Like a coward. I turn my brain off until it's over, or I start yelling back. And then I think he must be right. I must be crazy, because I can't even remember what's going on, or what happened afterwards. I know I lose my temper, and he has to defend himself. Timbo, you aren't crazy or a coward. You're disassociating. It's a trauma response. Jason explained. Tim knew what disassociation was. He'd been doing it for years. It had been a necessity to help him manage long hours spent alone as a child, but never in the way he experienced with his dad. Your dad really shouldn't be making you feel that way, Dick explained. But how can you say it's his fault when you don't even know what happened? Tim asked miserably. I get angry and I act out, and talk back all the time. I lie and keep secrets. I'm a bad son. Tim, honey, no. Tim avoided meeting Dick's gaze, weighed down by the sadness and anger in his voice. You're a fantastic kid. All kids act out sometimes. Your dad shouldn't be making you feel so bad that you shut down, Dick said. As for what happened, you can tell us. I know you aren't a liar. I promise we will believe whatever you say. The three boys sat in silence for several minutes, each soaking in what the other had said. Tim felt heavy and floaty at the same time. The tears had finally stopped, leaving his eyes achy and tired. I don't know if I tripped, Tim finally whispered. What do you think happened? Dick asked softly, matching Tim's tone. Tim tried to replay the scenes in his head. It was still so fuzzy. I think my dad grabbed me and pulled my arm. He said he was trying to catch me, and then he dropped me, and I landed on the plates. But he was so angry. Tim could feel his lip quivering. Why is he always so angry? The question came out as a whisper. Dick pulled him up into a hug. Tim hugged back tightly with his good arm, burying his face in Dick's shoulder. After a moment, he heard Jason grumble before wrapping his arms around both of them. Dick must have made him do it. We'll take care of it, Timbo. Jason reassured him. Just let your brothers handle this. Chapter 10. Turns out they were not on the same page about how to handle Jack Drake. Jason felt he had the better solution. Red Hood protects kids. Jack Drake hurt a kid. Therefore, the Red Hood and his favorite Glock would pay Jack Drake a visit. Unfortunately, Timbo wasn't on board with this plan. Jason and his brothers had sat in silence for a while, giving Tim time to calm down. Once Jason was fairly sure Tim wasn't going to panic or disassociate again, he started moving. For once, his rage didn't feel like it was clouding his judgment. His mind was crystal clear as he grabbed his helmet. Tim protested vehemently when Jason started gearing up. Jason was prepared to ignore him until he saw those damn puppy dog eyes. To make it worse, the kid didn't even appear to be trying this time. Tim, he hurt you. He's been gaslighting you, and telling people you're crazy. Let me take out his kneecaps. Jason grabbed his jacket. I still don't know what happened for sure. It might have been an accident. Tim insisted, turning to Dick. Tell him, Dick. He can't go after my dad. Jason wasn't sure why Tim expected Dick to be the voice of reason. The guy basically invented crashing out. Dick kept his arm wrapped firmly around Tim's shoulders. That bruise is no accident, Timmy. Tim stared at Dick for a long moment, before seemingly accepting that he wouldn't find an ally in his brother. He turned back to Jason, clearly switching tactics. Hey, remember that time you tried to kill me? Dick let out a choked noise at the casual statement. No. Jason shook his head. This damn kid. No way, baby bird. You don't get to use that again. Jason, please don't re-traumatize me by attacking my dad when I'm just starting to feel safe around you. Bright blue eyes bore into Jason's soul. Jason took in Tim's tense posture and clenched fists, paired with the puppy dog eyes. He groaned loudly. Fuck, fine. Jason caved way too easy. God, this older brother thing was bullshit. Still, it was worth it when he saw the kid relax. As much as Jason wanted to take out his anger on the appropriate party, a part of him recognized that Tim needed him more. So, now that murder is off the table, was that disappointment in Dick's tone? Interesting. We need to come up with a plan to keep you safe, Timmy. Can't I just try to talk things out with my dad? He said he was trying to catch me, and even if it was on purpose, I'm Robin. I can handle him. Tim sent them both a pleading look. Not a chance, baby bird. Jason shot him down immediately. Doesn't matter if you can handle it. No one accidentally dislocates their son's arm. You aren't going back there. Dick ran long fingers through Tim's hair, the gesture softening the boy's frustrated expression. Tim, there's an obvious solution. You come back to the manor. No, we don't need to bother Bruce. Tim shook his head, a slightly panicked expression on his face. If I can't go home, I'll just stay with my uncle. Dick and Jason both looked at him in confusion. Tim, you don't have an uncle, Jason said slowly. His stalking detective work would have turned that up by now. Tim held up his chin stubbornly. I could have an uncle. You could, but you don't, Jason responded. Give me 10 minutes and a computer, and Eddie Drake will be ready to launch. I've had him on backup for years. I just need to hire an actor. This fucking kid. Okay, we don't have to unpack all of that, but no, Tim, a fake uncle is not what we are doing. Dick shook his head at Tim's ridiculous plan. I can call Bruce and get Alfred to set up your old room. Actually, I'm pretty sure the room is still set up. Tim slumped down in his seat. I really don't want to put Bruce in that position. Jason raised an eyebrow. What the hell do you mean, replacement? Bruce loves snatching up sob stories. I bet he's had your adoption papers drawn up since the day you put on the tights. Actually, I added pants to the Robin suit. Tim corrected. Whatever, way to brag, kid. And Bruce doesn't feel that way about me. Both Dick and Jason look at Tim incredulously. Tim, what are you talking about? Dick asked. Bruce loves you. He was literally your foster dad for 6 months. Now it was Tim's turn to look confused. No? That was just so I could keep being Robin. It was a professional arrangement. I'm not like family. Jason was going to kill Bruce. 3 kids in, and he was still screwing it up. Dick looked shattered. Timmy, no! You're family. You're my baby brother. You know that, right? Tim still looked confused, but a spark of something hopeful was showing in his eyes. What? Tim, you're my brother. I take you train surfing. We get ice cream after patrol. I help you with your homework. Hell, you've spent weekends at my apartment. Dick had tears in his eyes. which was making Jason a bit uncomfortable. He wasn't sure he was up for another crying brother. "Those are things I do with my brothers!" Fuck. Now Tim looked like he was gonna cry again. Just as Jason was shoring up to deal with yet another round of emotions, Tim jumped into Dick's arms, hugging him tightly. "Do you really mean that?" Tim's voice was muffled by Dick's chest. "Of course! You and Jason are my baby brothers. You're both stuck with me," Dick responded, running his hand through Tim's hair. Tim seemed to melt into the feeling. Jason cleared his throat roughly, trying to pretend Dick's words weren't getting to him as well. When Bruce first adopted Jason, Dick had wanted nothing to do with him. They didn't start to build a brotherly relationship until right before Jason died. The rejection had stuck with Jason. It was amplified when he got back to learn Dick had replaced him with a new little brother, after not even bothering to go to his funeral. Now, Dick was calling Jason his little brother, putting him into the same category as Tim Drake, who was clearly loved. The temptation to shove all that down was strong, but Jason could face his feelings for a minute, for the sake of the kid. "Same here, Timbo. I'm not going anywhere." "So, will you come home?" Dick asked Tim, after he had a few minutes to compose himself again. They were all gonna need a shit ton of electrolytes after this sob fest. Tim pulled back. "What about Jason?" "What about me, kid?" Jason asked, confused. "If I go stay at the manor, will you come too?" Tim asked, looking up at him. Jason spluttered, shaking his head. "No. Sorry, kiddo, but hell no. Bruce and I can barely exist in the same city, let alone under the same roof." Tim opened his mouth to reply. "And if you try and guilt-trip me one more time, I'm telling Alfred you'd rather make up a fake uncle than live with him." Tim gasped, looking betrayed, and more than a little panicked. "You wouldn't!" "I would," Jason replied solemnly. "Seriously, kid, it wouldn't work. Bruce would tell you the same thing." A small part of him wished it would work. Jason hit that part with a sledgehammer. Dick gave Jason a long, considering look. "Hold on, Tim. Don't give up your leverage yet." He leaned over, whispering in Tim's ear. Jason narrowed his eyes in suspicion. Tim nodded, then turned to Jason, puppy dog eyes firmly in place again. "I know you don't want to come live at the manor, Jason, and I support that, but will you please come to Sunday dinners? I know Alfred misses you." Jason glared down at the twerp. The kid's eyes watered. Jason glared harder. Tim's lip wobbled. "Fuck, fine. Fine, I'll come to one dinner." Jason huffed, throwing his hands up. "One per month?" Dick jumped in, adding his own puppy dog eyes. Jason knew Dick was trying to distract Tim from his dad. But this was cruel. Jason was a crime lord. He was a seasoned killer. He was the infamous Red Hood. And, apparently, he was a sucker. "One per month," he sighed. "But I'm doing this for Alfred, not for you." And if a small part of Jason was doing it for himself, well, then shut the fuck up. Dick and Tim cheered, high-fiving. Dick pulled Jason into an octopus hug, ignoring the squawk of protest. Tim giggled at the ridiculous noise, which made it slightly worth it. After a minute of Jason trying to escape his freakishly strong brother, Dick finally released him. "Alright, you guys figure out something for breakfast. I'll go call Bruce." Dick grabbed his phone and headed towards the bedroom. Jason brought Tim to the kitchen, stating that now was the perfect time for another cooking lesson. Tim knew Jason was trying to distract him, but he was grateful enough not to comment. "Okay, Tamantha, today's goal is an omelet." There wasn't much Tim could do with a bad arm. Jason tasked him with laying out the ingredients and washing the vegetables. Tim used the silence to plan out exactly what he would say to Bruce. If Bruce was going to find out, Tim needed to get this right. Dick walked in as they were plating the first omelet. He scooped it up immediately, dodging Jason's attempts to stop him as he dug in. "That wasn't for you, asshole." "Bruce will be here in an hour," Dick said around a mouthful of egg. Tim snorted as Jason let out an annoyed huff. He tried to ignore the kernel of fear in his stomach. Tim wasn't sure what he was doing right now. Moving out seemed like a drastic step. The thought of his dad begging him not to leave a few nights ago kept replaying in his head, causing a weight to build in his chest. Still, Tim couldn't help the wave of relief when Dick and Jason said they would take care of things. Living at the manor had been so easy. Sure, Bruce had been a broody bastard, but Tim never felt the same confusing uncertainty in Wade Manor that he did living with his father. And Bruce had come a long way since Tim's early Robin days. Tim wasn't afraid to say that the Batman who trained him had been a real piece of shit. Jason's death had broken something in the man, leaving behind a drunken, brooding, angry mess. These days, Bruce could still brood like no other, but Tim had watched the anger fade and a kinder side of him emerge, with time and healing. As the two got used to one another, Bruce had softened considerably. When Tim moved into the manor, Bruce had started being even more attentive. Tim's mentor would ask him about school, friends, and his hobbies. He asked to see Tim's photographs, something his parents had never done, and once even took him to see a photography exhibit at the museum. The Riddler had interrupted the day by attacking the museum, so Bruce had rescheduled a private tour. Tim knew he was just trying to be a good guardian, that Tim wasn't really his son, but it was more positive attention than any adult had given Tim before in his life. Was it really that wrong for Tim to want more of that, even if it made him selfish? Dick and Jason had implied that Bruce saw him as family. Maybe they were right. Jason set down a plate in front of Tim, pulling him out of his reverie. "Eat up, baby bird." "Thanks, Jay." Tim balanced the plate in his hand and carried it over to the coffee table. Dick and Jason joined him, as Jason turned on some period piece on the TV. Tim feigned polite interest as Jason went on an impassioned rant about why the male love interest was the perfect man. Dick threw in his 2 cents periodically, with comments that seemed to be designed to piss Jason off more than reflect an actual opinion. Before Tim knew it, an hour had passed, and there was a knock at the door. The calm that had settled over him shattered, replaced by icy dread. Jason stood immediately and retreated to his bedroom to avoid his father, as Dick rose to answer the door. Bruce swept in as soon as the door opened, scanning his eldest before turning his eyes on Tim. "Tim, what happened? Bruce said you needed me." Bruce walked over, taking in Tim once again. Restrained arm, bandaged hand, and cut cheek. "Are you okay?" He took a seat on the couch. Tim took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart, as he mentally reviewed the speech he had planned. "What did Dick tell you exactly?" Bruce frowned. "He said you stayed the night with Jason, and had fought with your father. He wouldn't tell me anything else." Bruce's tone was neutral, but Tim knew him well enough to tell he was frustrated with the lack of information. Dick had made himself busy with the dishes in the kitchen, but remained within earshot. Tim nodded, appreciating that Dick would let Tim explain things on his own terms. He channeled his mother's teachings, allowing a wave of cool calm to fall over him as he tucked his panic away. "All right, then. So, Bruce, Jason and Dick feel it's best if I move out of my father's house. I am inclined to agree. I understand that you took me in previously so that I could remain Robin. However, I want you to know that you are under no obligation to do so again. I have several backup plans in place that would allow me to leave home while still maintaining my vigilante status. Please do not feel that you need to take me in out of a misplaced sense of guilt or responsibility." There, succinct, professional, without any unfair pressure on Bruce or unnecessary details. Tim was rather proud of himself. Bruce stared at him dumbfounded, as Dick facepalmed in the kitchen. Jason threw open his bedroom door and stormed out, causing Tim to jump. "Jesus, kid, what the hell was that?" He turned to face Bruce. "Listen, asshole, Tim's dad is an abusive piece of shit, and the kid doesn't know you consider him family already, so he won't admit he wants to come live with you again. Fix it." Jason placed his hands on his hips, glaring at Bruce. "Well, there goes all Tim's hard work." Bruce stared at Jason for a long moment before turning back to Tim. "Is that true? You want to live the manor?" Tim nodded sheepishly, cheeks flushed red. He was glad Bruce had focused on that part and not the abusive piece of shit part. "I mean, if that's okay with you?" "Like I said, you don't." Tim cut off with a squeak as Bruce pulled him into a hug, cradling the back of his head. Tim was pretty sure he had been hugged more in the past 2 weeks than he usually was in a year. "Tim, sweetheart, I would love for you to move back home. Alfred already has your bedroom ready." And shit, Tim was tearing up again. He deserved an award for all this emotional expression, and maybe some Pedialyte. Really? Tim asked, voice small. Of course. Now, tell me what happened with your dad. Bruce sat back. Tim wiped his eyes, considering what to say. Once he told Bruce, there would be no turning back. Jason and Dick had believed him without hesitation, and he hoped Bruce would do the same. A small part of him worried Bruce would think he was overreacting. Hell, Tim still partially felt like he was overreacting. But if he didn't tell Bruce, Dick or Jason would, and he wasn't ready to hear how they would portray things. Tim tried to present the facts like he would in a mission report, keeping things cold and clinical, and uncomplicated. He explained slowly, with occasional interjections from Jason and Dick, who apparently thought he was sugarcoating things. Bruce listened attentively, the entire time, not showing any reaction beyond the occasional clenched jaw or intake of breath. As soon as Tim finished his story, Bruce whipped out his phone. I'll have custody by tomorrow, at the latest. Tim's muscles unclenched at Bruce's words. Bruce didn't question him. He believed him. Bruce would take care of things. Wait here with your brothers while I call my lawyer. Jason, could I use your room? As long as you don't mind the guns and weapons everywhere, Jason responded challengingly, crossing his arms and lifting his chin. It occurred to Tim that this was the first time he'd seen the two interact outside of costume. To Bruce's credit, he just nodded in acquiescence. Jason pointed at the door, and Bruce slipped out. Dick came and sat next to Tim again. Still worried he doesn't want you? Tim blushed and looked down, not responding. Bruce's response had been fairly clear. Dick pulled Tim into his side, pressing a kiss into his head. Why don't you go take a shower while Bruce makes his call? It'll make you feel better. Tim nodded in agreement. A shower sounded heavenly. His face was tacky from dried tears, and he had gotten sweaty running around the city last night. He shook his head for a moment. He stood and headed for Jason's small bathroom, grabbing a towel from the closet. Jason, can I borrow some clothes? Sure, kiddo. Jason ruffled Tim's hair as he passed. I'll leave something on the counter. Tim entered the bathroom, latching the door behind him. He turned on the shower and pulled out his phone, while he waited for the water to heat up. He should probably call Stephanie and apologize for last night. Maybe a gift card to Jitter's Coffee would help. His stomach dropped when he unlocked the screen. The first thing he saw was a text from Donna, asking how the rest of dinner went, and reminding him she was there if he wanted to talk. Tim made a mental note to text her back later, and offer some reassurance. He got the feeling Donna was getting frustrated with his dad's behavior. It was the other notifications that made him nervous. 10 missed calls from Dad showed up on his home screen, along with 5 voicemails. He stared at the screen for a long moment, finger hovering over the first voicemail. He wasn't sure if he wanted to hear it. The decision was made for him when his phone started buzzing in his hand. A familiar photo of him and his father at a baseball game filled the screen. Behind the name, Dad, in the picture, Jack had a grinning 9-year-old Tim hoisted up on his shoulders. Tim's father had his chin tilted up, looking up at his son with warm eyes. That had been a good day. Tim remembered that Jack had skipped an important meeting at DI just to take him to the game. Tim stared at the man in the picture. It wasn't an unfamiliar sight. Jack had looked at Tim like that, like he was his whole world, many times, especially when he was younger. Guilt sat heavy in his stomach as his mind once again flashed back to sitting with his father on the couch, hugging the man, as he promised not to leave. Jack's words echoed in his mind. If you weren't in my life, it would kill me. And now, what was Tim doing? He was leaving. And for what? A sore arm? He had had worse injuries on patrol. Hell, he had had worse injuries training with young Justice. Could he really do this to his dad? With numb fingers, Tim answered the phone. Chapter 11. Tim's hand was shaking as he raised his phone to his ear. Hello?
Timothy, is that you?
Jack sounded completely wrecked. Yes, Dad, it's me. Tim wished he had brought his water with him. Why was his throat so dry?
Where on earth are you? Do you know how worried I've been?
Tim leaned against the wall behind him, grateful for the sound of running water providing him with some privacy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you worry.
My 15-year-old son disappeared in the middle of the night. Of course I'm worried.
The agitation in Jack's tone was increasing as his words picked up speed.
You better be on your way home. How could you be so irresponsible? I nearly called the police.
Jack's words reminded Tim of the conversation he'd overheard this morning. He tried to swallow past the glass in his throat. Dad, why did you tell Dick I had drugs in my room? The line went quiet for a long moment. Tim noted distantly that his heart had started pounding again. When Jack spoke, his voice was ice cold.
Timothy, are you with the Waynes right now?
Tim didn't respond to the question. He didn't know what to say. His silence only served to anger Jack further.
How many times do I have to tell you?
Tim jerked the phone away from his ear as his dad's voice increased in volume.
They're not your family. I am, and I don't want you anywhere near them.
Dad, you can't just expect me to cut them out of my life. Why couldn't his dad understand what the Waynes meant to him? Jack took a deep breath. His following words come out more softly.
Do you really hate me so much, Timothy? Have I been such a bad father that you need to replace me? I'm trying, son. I really am. But we can't make this family work if you keep trying to force your way into another one.
The words hit like a punch to the gut. I didn't... They just helped me with my arm, Dad. I didn't mean to... Jack cut him off.
Oh, so you skip our family dinner to spend time with them, then pick a fight with me, only to go crying to them? What the hell are you trying to do, Timothy? Am I not good enough for you? You need to run off and play house with Brucey Wayne of all people.
Tim tried to control his own volume, conscious of Jason and Dick in the other room. It wasn't like that, Dad. I was upset.
Upset? How do you think I feel? Do you have any idea what the past year has been like for me? I woke up from a coma only to learn that my wife is dead and my son fucked off to join another family, just when I needed him the most.
Tim slid down to the floor, knees pulled close to his chest, as he tried to come up with a response. His brain was moving too slow to find the words he needed, so he fell back on what he knew. I'm sorry.
Sorry? Sorry for what?
Jack scoffed.
Sorry for running away? Sorry for treating me like dirt? Sorry for replacing me with Bruce Wayne?
Tim didn't know what he was sorry for. He was mostly just sorry that he answered the phone. He just wanted this conversation to end. He was so tired.
If your mother could see you now, she would be rolling in her grave. After everything we sacrificed for you, you try to run off and force your way into another family. I can't believe my own son is abandoning me.
Tim's eyes were burning. What would his mother think?
Just get home, Timothy. We can talk about this more in person.
Tim winced, knowing how his response would be received. I can't come home, Dad.
Can't?
Jack asked incredulously.
What, did your legs stop working?
No, but Dick and Bruce... Tim was cut off by a wordless yell from his father, paired with the sound of shattering glass.
I'm sick and tired of hearing that man's name. Do you think he cares about you, Timothy? Do you think either of them do? You're a charity case to them. Soon they'll see what a horrible son you are, and they won't want you around.
That isn't true, Tim whispered back. It couldn't be true.
Of course it is. Bruce Wayne already has a son. Why the hell would he want you? You're nothing but a waste of space, and if he doesn't know that yet, he will soon.
Tim flinched at the words. His father kept ranting, throwing insults his way, but Tim stopped listening. He had heard it all before. He felt the phone slip from his fingers and land on the rug with a soft thud. As soon as the bathroom door shut, Dick stood and grabbed his keys. I'm gonna go get Tim's stuff from his dad's house. Jason moved to grab his helmet. I'll come with you. Dick shook his head. Absolutely not. Tim doesn't want his dad dead, and you won't be able to resist if you see him. Plus, if Tim comes out and we're both gone, he'll panic. Jason huffed in irritation. Oh, like you didn't plan on killing him. I'll have you know, I've been taking anger management courses. Bullshit, Jason thought. I'll go through Tim's window. He won't even know I'm there. Jason absolutely did not pout. You just want to get to him first. Perks of being the oldest, Dick responded breezily. Now, are you really going to leave Tim alone with Bruce? In your apartment? Damn. Dick had him there. Just go, Dickface. Dick shot him a cheeky salute before leaving. Jason waited a few minutes before knocking on the bathroom door. holding a soft red hoodie that Tim had borrowed in the past, along with a pair of shorts that might fit the kid. "Hey, Timbo, I brought you some clothes." Jason listened for a response, but heard nothing beyond the sound of running water. He waited a beat before knocking again. "Tim, I brought that hoodie you keep trying to steal. Can I leave it on the counter?" Still no response. Jason started to get a bit nervous. Tim hadn't hit his head last night, had he? Jason should have checked. "Speak now or forever hold your peace, buddy. I'm opening the door." He gave it another moment before cautiously cracking the door open. Quiet sniffling met his ears. The door opened about halfway before bumping into something. Jason looked down and saw Tim sitting against the wall, knees pulled in and face tucked into his crossed arms. "Tim?" Jason reached over and shut off the shower before bending down onto one knee, worry churning in his gut. He reached out and placed a hand on the kid's shoulder. As his weight shifted, his knee bumped into something. He looked down and saw Tim's phone. The screen lit up with an active call. Jason picked up the phone and held it to his ear. The things he heard Jack Drake saying had him seeing red. It took all of Jason's willpower to hang up the phone and not go kick the man's ass immediately. The time for that would come. For now, he had a distraught teenager in front of him, and no dick to help him deal with emotions. It was a tight squeeze, but Jason managed to sit down next to Tim and wrap an arm around him. Tim leaned into the embrace, his frame shaking lightly. Jason carefully tucked away his anger, to be used at a later time. "What happened, kid?" Jason could guess, but wanted to give Tim the chance to tell him. Tim sniffed, but didn't raise his head. His voice was muffled by his arms. He called me to ask me to come home. Then he said I'm a waste of space, and that Bruce wouldn't want me around." Jason took a deep breath, careful not to jostle Tim's arm as he pulled him closer. "He's wrong. He's so fucking wrong, Tim. Bruce wants you. That isn't ever gonna change. And if by some fucking chance it does, then you can come stay here. You're not going back there." Tim finally lifted his head, looking at Jason with wide eyes. Jason winced in sympathy at the red, raw skin around them. "Do you mean that?" he asked. "Of course I do," Jason said without hesitation. "We're brothers now, Timbers. You'll always have a place with me." Tim leaned his head against Jason's shoulder, some of the tension releasing from his frame. "Thank you." Jason just gave him a gentle squeeze in response. He sat on the bathroom floor and held Tim until he stopped shaking, ignoring the way his bud fell asleep. Once Tim seemed to have calmed down, he spoke again. "Do you want to try the shower again, or go lay down?" "Lay down," Tim responded immediately, wiping his eyes. "I think if I try to shower, I'll fall asleep standing up." Jason laughed. He wouldn't put it past the kid. "All right, then." He maneuvered up off the floor before helping Tim up. The two made their way out of the bathroom, just as Bruce was exiting Jason's bedroom. Jason tensed up at the sight of the man. "Everything is taken care of," Bruce said, tucking his phone into his pocket. "We can go back to the manor as soon as you're ready." He looked up, taking in Tim's exhausted stance and red eyes. "Did something happen?" "His dad called," Jason answered, keeping his arm around Tim. Bruce scowled. "I see. What did he say?" Tim was leaning his weight into Jason more and more. "I don't want to talk about it. Can we just go?" Bruce's face softened as he looked at his youngest son. "Of course. Jason, are you coming?" "No, I have some business to take care of." As much as Jason wanted to be there for Tim, the phone call paired with the close proximity to Bruce had his anger boiling just below the surface. He needed to let it out, and didn't want that to happen with Tim around. Jason transferred Tim over to Bruce, the kid practically asleep on his feet. "Jay?" Tim caught his sleeve. "Yeah, kiddo? Can I still borrow your hoodie?" Jason gave a fox-exasperated sigh. "Fine, as long as you promise to give it back." "I promise," Tim said, like a liar. Jason handed the hoodie to Bruce, along with Tim's now powered-down phone, and walked them out. He watched Bruce fuss over Tim as he got him settled into his car, going as far as to buckle the kid in. Bruce closed the passenger door and turned to Jason. Jason tensed up under the man's gaze. "Thank you for taking care of him, Jason." Bruce looked at him steadily. Jason looked down, scuffing his shoe against the pavement. Yeah, whatever. I didn't do it for you. I know. Bruce responded evenly. You're a good brother, and I want you to know there is still a place for you in this family, if you want it. Jason bit down his immediate response that Bruce had filled that replacement before his body was even cold. He knew that that wasn't what happened now, but still. I don't know if I'm ready for that, Bruce. Bruce stared at him with sad eyes for a long moment, before nodding. When you're ready, then. The man walked around and climbed into his car, driving off a minute later. Jason stood out on the sidewalk for a few minutes, Bruce's words echoing in his head, before he headed inside to grab his gear. Red Hood had a visit to make. It was concerningly easy for Dick to sneak into Tim's bedroom. The window wasn't even locked, which made sense if Tim had used it to leave the night before. Dick chose to avoid the front door. He knew that if he saw Jack Drake, he wouldn't be able to control his temper, regardless of what he said to Jason. Tim's bedroom with his dad was nothing like his room at the manor. His bedroom at the manor was the definition of organized chaos. Alfred helped maintain all of the rooms in the parts of the building that were in use, including the bedrooms in the family wing. But he knew better to mess with Tim's self-proclaimed system. Tim always had dirty clothes scattered across the floor and his bed, while papers and post-it notes littered every available surface. Photos of his friends in the Wayne family hung on the walls, along with Tim's own pictures of the Gotham skyline. There were no pictures of the bats themselves. Those were kept in the cave, where Alfred had insisted on framing a few of his favorites. This room looked positively sterile in comparison. All of the laundry was neatly tucked away. A bookshelf against one wall held tasteful knickknacks, along with a set of classic novels that Dick knew Tim would never be interested in. An abstract, contemporary painting hung over the beige bedding. All in all, it looked like a well-decorated hotel room. The only personal touches were Tim's camera, which sat on a bookshelf, and a single family photo on his nightstand. It was the same picture Tim had kept on his nightstand at the manor. The photograph featured a much younger Tim, standing stiffly in a formal suit, with his parents flanking him either side. Jack Drake's large hand on Tim's shoulder. All three of them had blank, empty smiles as they stared at the camera. Guilt ate away at Dick as he started packing. How many times had he thought something was wrong with Tim? How many times had he brushed it off? He was a detective. He knew to trust his instincts in these situations, and his instincts told him that Jack Drake was bad news since the day they first met. It didn't take long for Dick to pack. Tim already had clothes at the manor, and anything else he needed would be purchased by Bruce, along with plenty of things he didn't need. Dick made sure to be careful to place Tim's camera in its case. He grabbed Tim's backpack and suitcase from his closet and began filling it with whatever fit. Dick was zipping the suitcase closed when he heard a loud bang downstairs, followed by the sound of Jack Drake yelling. He dropped the bag and ran out of the room, rushing down the stairs, just in time to see the Red Hood shoot Jack in the knee. Dick should probably stop him, right? Too bad, Dick Grayson was a civilian with no combat skills and no hope of beating the Red Hood. Dick leaned against the wall of the stairwell to watch the show. Jack was cursing and clutching at his knee, trying to stem the flow of blood as Hood strolled towards him, gun raised. Stop! I have money! The man held out one bloody hand, as if to hold Hood off. Red Hood scoffed, the noise warped by the vocal modulator in his helmet. I don't give a shit about money. Do you know who I am? He grabbed Jack's outstretched arm, twisting it hard to the side, until a loud pop echoed through the room. Jack screamed, clutching his shoulder, as Hood dropped him. Jack's lip quivered as he looked around the room frantically. He caught sight of Dick. Richard! Great! Thank God! Call the police! Dick stepped forward, hands raised. Gosh, I would, Jack, but the darndest thing happened the other day. I accidentally dropped my phone in the garbage disposal. Can you believe it? Jack stared at him with wide eyes, mouth opening and closing as he struggled for a response. Well? Hood grabbed the man by his collar, shaking him to regain his attention. I asked you a question. Do you know who I am? You're the Red Hood. Jack was nearly sobbing by now. Please, why are you doing this? So you know who I am? Red Hood crouched down, punching Jack in the nose. It started gushing blood. Do you know my one rule? Jack shook his head, big tears rolling down his cheeks. Don't hurt kids. Hood pistol-whipped the man, releasing his collar and letting him collapse to the floor. Jack lay in a puddle of his own blood, moaning pathetically. Red Hood kicked him in the gut before making his way over to Dick. You're coming with me. We'll see what Bruce Wayne is willing to pay. He grabbed Dick by the arm, pulling him through the kitchen and out the back door. As soon as they were outside, he released him. So, you think he'll live? Dick asked lightly. Red Hood shrugged, putting his handgun back in his side holster. Sure, as long as he calls an ambulance soon. Shouldn't be too hard. I left his phone in the kitchen. Neighbors probably heard the gunshots, Dick pointed out. Then we should probably get going. You get Timmy's stuff? Hood asked. Dick groaned. Fuck, I left it upstairs. I'll have to go back. Idiot. Hood smacked him lightly on the back of his head. You can't go back in there. I just kidnapped you. Dick looked up at Tim's still open window, sighing loudly as sirens began sounding in the distance. Give me 2 minutes. An hour later, Dick walked into the family room of the manor, Tim's suitcase and backpack in hand. Bruce looked up at him from his seat on the couch. Tim's head pillowed in his lap as the boy snored softly. Dick, why did I just get a call from Commissioner Gordon saying that you were abducted by the Red Hood? Jason strolled in behind Dick, grinning widely. Pay up, old man. Ransom set for $500,000. Notes. And they all lived happily ever after. Finally, Jack got his ass handed to him. As for what happens next, that's up to you all. I have some ideas in mind, but nothing that is ready to be shared. As for now, that's a wrap, folks. I can't believe I made it. I'm so sad to be done with this work. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all the love and support this story has received. Every comment and kudos has meant the world to me. Writing these characters was a chance for me to grow as an author, while exploring my own identity and hearing what the story meant to other people. It's been such an honor. I have some more story ideas cooking for this fandom, and I will hopefully be sharing more in the future. Thank you all again for taking the time to read. Tim. Steph, fix my arm. Steph. Tim, that's disgusting. We should call an adult. Tim. Nah, YouTube is the only adult I need. Jason. You're both idiots. Tim. Yes. I will let my brothers handle this. They will certainly respond in a calm, reasonable fashion. Jason and Dick. Planning murder. Tim. I've prepared for this situation. Jason. You haven't prepared for shit. Who wants to kill Jack? Me. I do. Jack is his usual charming self, isn't he just? The cat's fucking killing me. He never plays with toys unless I'm recording. Yep, I have her. I've captured her. Is she gonna chill out now? Just needing it. Why was, fucking Jason choosing a day to teach Tim how to make pancakes to be the day that he has a waffle date with Stephanie? My man is breakfast-pilled today. Our theme may just be random animals because llama, penguin, and bunny don't go together, but he doesn't fit the theme. Terrifying statement to hear from the other room. I don't know what the fuck the people upstairs are doing, but I'm probably gonna have to edit out a bunch of bangs. What the fuck are they doing? I found drugs in his room. No, you fucking didn't. I fucking hate this man. Tim, hello? Tim, baby girl, no. He's such a little bastard. I love him. We need to come up with a plan to... We need to keep... There are uncles? I could have one. All I read during October is horny shit. He's just a little guy. He's just a little fella. Tim's voice was muffled by his massive testicles, sorry. Jesus, I agree with Jason. Jesus Christ, kid. Nope, don't go onto the keyboard. Stay off of my keyboard. Guilt ate away at Jack. I would never. I love this image of fucking Dick just like leaning against a wall watching.